The 2024 Formula One season is getting closer and closer, and we're starting to see what the cars are going to look like this year, with most of the major teams having unveiled their cars in time for testing in Bahrain towards the end of February. So, what can we learn from the car revealed so far, and what do they tell us about the design choices that each team have made for 2024? Red Bull, the reigning world champions, have an almost impossible job repeating their dominance from a year ago. The RB19 is arguably the most dominant car in Formula One history. They have a difficult job of producing a car similarly fast to last year. Red Bull have always been a team that has stuck in the same livery, so the RB20 did not look a huge amount different to the RB19 when it was unveiled. The initial design didn't look much different, but we've gotten some more information on the design of the new car thanks to a shakedown run at Silverstone. One of the things that was pretty easy to notice was the long cooling gullies that ran along the length of the engine cover. The shock for F1 fans is that this design has been seen in the sport before, but not from any of the cars you would expect. That design is similar to the zero side pod design that Mercedes used on its W14 car, the design that made Mercedes fall off the pace of the teams at the front and received heavy criticism from both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. So you can see why it was slightly surprising to see Red Bull go with that design. It's not just a zero-pod design which is similar to Mercedes, with the engine cover of the RB20 also having some similarities with the Mercedes of 2023. It'll be incredibly interesting to see whether Red Bull stick with this design when we get to Sakir for pre-season testing. It is a design which certainly did not work for Mercedes, but maybe the reigning champions could turn it into a winning strategy. There is certainly a lot of risk behind Red Bull taking such an extreme aerodynamic concept, particularly after being the dominant car last year. We'll have to wait and see whether this strategy works on the track. Ferrari going for a unique design. It would be easy for every team on the grid to simply copy the concept that drove Red Bull to new heights last season. But Ferrari seem committed to sticking with a different concept that will be almost completely revamped compared to last year. Ferrari's chassis technical director Enrico Cardile was very open about how different this car is, saying that the SF24 is a big departure from the Ferrari cars of the previous 2 seasons. Red Bull found success with a perfect balance between their underfloor and suspension working together. Red Bull used a pushrod rear suspension last year, and you would imagine that they will do the same in 2024. But Ferrari are seemingly sticking with the pull rod suspension. Haas will be the only other team on the grid to follow suit because they take parts from Ferrari. The Italian team did research changing to the pushrod layout, but they found it didn't give them a big enough advantage for the change to be worth it. The front suspension is going to be pretty similar to last season, with the Scuderia focusing more on revamping their rear suspension. The SF24 does feature Red Bull-like lower lips that are just in front of the radiator inlets and should help the car navigate the disruptive air spilling out of the radiator inlet. Ferrari want to make sure the car is more comfortable for both drivers, as this was a huge issue in 2023. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz both complained about the drivability of the car last year, and so Ferrari needed to give their drivers a car that gave them more confidence. Leclerc certainly seems to be more confident with this year's car, having driven a series of installation laps in Fiorano. The Monegasque driver told the media he knew after just a few laps that the SF23 was going to be a difficult car to drive, and he doesn't have that feeling with the SF24. Just because the car is more comfortable to drive doesn't mean it's going to be any faster. Ferrari's unique design choices could give them a competitive edge over the field, or it could cause them to fall away from the leading pack. Mercedes also deferring with their suspension. Ferrari are not the only team going for a different suspension design to Red Bull. Mercedes unveiled the W15, and it was noticeable that the team had made some huge changes. The suspension is a major talking point, with Mercedes going for a pushrod design at the back of the car instead of the previous pull rod design. This does not affect the front suspension, which will remain a pushrod design for the 2024 season. It was not a huge surprise that Mercedes had changed their rear suspension, as we already saw the pushrod design in the Aston Martin, who used a Mercedes rear end. This should help Mercedes clear more room around the rear of the car for better airflow and more downforce. There is one more significant change which is noticeable straight away on the 2024 car. The driver's position has been moved back by 10 centimeters. This might sound like a tiny change, but it completely differs the feel and balance of the car. Lewis Hamilton has been calling for his team to move the driver position back slightly for the last couple of years, as Mercedes have a very forward driver position compared to the rest of the grid. Moving the drivers back should allow Lewis and George Russell to have a better feel of what the back of the car is doing. But it's the front wing of the W15 which has taken most of the headlines. The fourth flap that connects to the nose is incredibly thin, meaning it is still within regulation. The only reason that there is any material there is because it is required by the F1 rules. In theory, the thin strip should help push away dirty air away from the car and improve the downforce of the W15. While the design seems to be just about legal, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the grid and the FIA react to Mercedes' tricky front wing design. McLaren making minor changes. McLaren were the team that had the most progression in 2023. Having started off as one of the slowest teams on the grid, they developed into one of the fastest. That's why on the outside it certainly looks like McLaren have stuck with a similar design on the new MCL38. The front brake ducts have a slightly different inlet, while McLaren have also made minor changes to the floor edge to help their aerodynamics. What we do know is that under the skin, McLaren have made changes to the suspension of the car. That seems to have been the main focus of the team, and it explains why there are fewer aerodynamic changes than other teams. It seems like McLaren are not too confident about getting off to a hot start this year. CEO Zak Brown has highlighted the importance of maintaining realistic expectations in 2024. Team principal Andreas Stella gave a concerning detail about the car, saying that not all the areas the team wanted to address are finished. So, 2024 could be another season where McLaren are off the pace at the start of the year. The rest of the grid. Alpine have spent the off-season designing the A524 to be an aggressive car that can be molded throughout the season. 2024 is the first full season for the revamped management team, and so Alpine just want a season of stability. The noticeable changes to the new car include a revamped rear suspension and a deeper undercut side pod layout. Aston Martin tailed off towards the back end of last year, and their 2024 car features subtle changes throughout. The front wing now features a slot gap on the underside of the nose. Their front suspension will again be pushrod, but the team are using the new Mercedes pushrod gear. Haas seem to have stuck with an incredibly similar car in 2024 despite heading into the year with a new team principal. Kick Sauber feature one of the most dazzling liveries on the grid, with the new front suspension the biggest change. Red Bull's second team have increased their collaboration with the reigning champions, and it is noticeable on the car. They also feature a pull rod front suspension, the same as Red Bull. Williams are the only car on the grid where we are yet to see the details of the car. Maybe it's a good thing that the team are spending this long on the car. What do you think the car reveals tell us about the 2024 F1 season? Put your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're down there, hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.